Welcome to the Wellbeing Podcast, where every episode is a step toward a healthier.
Happier you.
Let's grow, thrive, and shine together. Don't forget to subscribe and like the Wellbeing Podcast. Share your thoughts, and let us know in the comments what topics you'd love to hear about in future episodes. Today we're diving deep into a topic that's probably hit all of us, where it hurts.
Breakups.
But this isn't just about wallowing. Think of this as your toolkit for not just surviving heartbreak, but using it to become an even stronger you.
That's a great perspective because one of the most fascinating things about breakups is that they don't just trigger sadness.
Oh, really?
We're talking primal reactions.
Okay.
Almost like a survival mechanism misfiring.
Okay, that's intriguing, but also a little scary.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been through breakups.
Yeah.
And the pain at its tense. It's not just missing someone sad. It's like physically awful. You feel like your whole world is imploding.
You're describing it perfectly, and that intensity isn't just in your head. The research points to our deep-seated need for connection, something that goes all the way back to our earliest caregivers.
So you're saying there's an evolutionary reason why breakups hit us so hard? Like, it's not just drama. It's hardwired into us.
It is.
Tell me more about this primal panic thing.
Imagine you're an infant in a harsh environment. Separation from your caregiver could literally mean death. Over time, we evolve powerful mechanisms to prevent that separation. The problem is, as adults, those same panic responses get triggered by breakups,
Oh.
even though we're not actually in mortal danger.
Okay, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Suddenly, those nights I spent obsessively checking my ex's Instagram stories feel a little less embarrassing.
Yeah,
It was basically my cavewoman brain freaking out.
exactly.
Huh.
And here's where it gets even more nuanced. If our early relationships with caregivers were a bit rocky, those attachment injuries can make breakups feel even more devastating.
Oh, wow.
It's like we're bringing emotional baggage to an already difficult situation.
So some people might be more susceptible to this primal panic than others, depending on their childhood experiences.
It is-
That's really insightful.
Okay.
But, okay, the pain is real. It's not just us being dramatic. So what can we do about it? Give us the good stuff.
Well, the first thing to understand is that there's a natural progression of grief that happens after a breakup.
Okay.
And the sources we've gathered for you actually break down this process in a really helpful way. The first stage is about accepting the reality of the loss.
That's where the whole self-care thing comes in, right?
Absolutely.
The first few weeks are brutal. I'm talking sleep comfort food, surrounding yourself with loved ones, and maybe hiding your phone so you don't go down that ex-stalking rabbit hole.
Yes, absolutely. You've got to prioritize those basic needs. But breakups also challenge our sense of self in a profound way.
Okay.
We often build our lives around our partners, and suddenly that foundation is gone.
You know, one of the articles you sent mentioned this, and it really resonated with me. It talked about how even simple things like hobbies you used to share with your ex can suddenly feel empty and weird.
That's a perfect example.
Yeah.
It's like a part of you is missing because your sense of self was so intertwined with the relationship.
Ah.
That's why reflecting on who am I now is so crucial. The sources suggest some really cool exercises to guide you through this process of rediscovering yourself.
So we're taking care of our bodies, starting to figure out who we are outside of the relationship. But what about those relentless negative thoughts that can completely sabotage us after a breakup?
Ah, yes, the mental gremlins.
Oh.
That's where understanding cognitive therapy can be a game changer. After a breakup, it's so easy to fall into thinking traps,
Yeah.
what we call cognitive distortions. Thoughts
Okay.
like, I'll never find anyone else, or it's all my fault, start to dominate our minds.
Ooh, I know those distortions all too well. The shoulda, woulda, coulda spiral is a personal favorite.
Right.
You just get stuck in this loop of blaming yourself for everything that went wrong.
And that's where the research suggests we need to actively challenge those thoughts.
Okay.
One technique from the sources is called thought challenging. Instead of saying, it's all my fault, try reframing it to, we both contributed to the relationship's issues.
Okay.
It's about bringing balance and recognizing that relationships involve two people.
So it's like taking those distorted thoughts to court and presenting a more balanced case.
I like that.
Okay, so we're working on our thoughts. But at some point, the question of dating again inevitably pops up.
Yeah.
Exciting and terrifying all at the same time.
Yeah.
What do the experts say about timing?
The biggest takeaway here is don't rush it. Most of the sources we've looked at recommend giving yourself at least 6-12 months to heal and learn from the past. Rushing into dating before you're ready can lead to repeating unhealthy patterns.
Oh, so you could end up in a relationship with a new version of your ex, basically.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Not ideal.
This time is about reflecting on what you truly want in a partner. understanding what needs weren't met before so you can make conscious choices when you're ready to date again. That's such a good point.
Yeah.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive.
Yeah.
The evolutionary reasons why breakups are so tough, navigating those intense emotions, and even starting to think about moving on. But, it's one thing to hear this stuff
Right.
and another to actually live it.
I completely agree. And I think that's what makes this next part so important.
Okay.
We're going to delve into some specific techniques and tools you can use to manage those tough emotions and start building a stronger, more resilient you.
Yes. So to our listeners, hang in there. We'll be right back with part 2, where we'll get into the practical strategies and exercises to help you move through this breakup and come out shining on the other side.
Welcome back to the Wellbeing Podcast. We just finished unpacking the science behind why breakups are so painful and how our brains react as if we're facing an existential threat.
It's true. Our brains are wired for connection.
Right.
And when that connection is severed,
Yeah.
it triggers a cascade of intense emotions. Right. And we talked about how understanding those emotions and giving ourselves permission to feel them is a crucial first step.
Absolutely.
But what about the practical side of things? I'm talking about the who gets the dog and what do I do with all these photos dilemmas.
Those practical challenges are a huge part of the breakup recovery process. One of the sources you sent over had this amazing analogy.
Okay.
It said that going through a breakup is like untangling a giant knot. You have to be patient and work through it strand by strand.
Ooh, I love that analogy. So where do we start with this untangling process? Give us the first strand, so to speak.
Well, the sources emphasize the importance of setting clear boundaries, especially with your ex.
Okay.
It's about creating emotional and physical space for yourself to heal.
Okay, so that might look like agreeing on a no-contact period or figuring out a system for dividing shared belongings. But what about mutual friends? That can be a tricky one to navigate.
It can be. And the sources acknowledge that some friendships might naturally shift or fade after a breakup. It's important to honor those changes and allow your social circle to evolve organically.
Right, because clinging to friendships that are no longer serving you can actually hinder your healing process.
Exactly.
And let's not forget about pets. Sharing custody of a furry friend can be a whole other level of emotional complexity.
It definitely adds another layer to the mix. And one of the sources you sent, a really insightful article by a relationship therapist, suggested that couples consider creating a pet parenting plan, similar to a child custody agreement.
That's such a smart idea.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, our pets are family.
They are.
And their well-being matters too. Speaking of well-being, in the last segment, we started talking about how breakups can really shake our sense of self.
Yeah.
What are some practical strategies for piecing that sense of self back together?
One technique that really stood out to me from the sources is the Who Am I Now exercise.
Oh, yeah.
It encourages you to explore different facets of your identity outside the context of the relationship. Think about your values, interests, goals, passions, the things that make you uniquely you.
Ooh, that's a good one. It's like hitting the reset button and rediscovering who you are at your core. And I know from personal experience that journaling can be a powerful tool for processing all the emotions that come up during a breakup.
Journaling is a fantastic way to get those thoughts and feelings out of your head and onto paper. And it can be especially helpful for working through those pesky cognitive distortions we talked about earlier.
Right, those negative thought patterns that can really spiral out of control after a breakup.
It's true.
So if I'm catching myself thinking I'm a total failure because this relationship ended, how can I use journaling to challenge that thought?
The sources suggest a technique called cognitive restructuring.
Okay.
It involves identifying the distorted thought, examining the evidence for and against it, and then reframing it in a more balanced and realistic way.
So instead of accepting that I'm a total failure narrative, I might journal about specific things I've accomplished or times I've overcome challenges in the past.
Exactly.
That would help me build a more realistic and compassionate view of myself.
Exactly. It's about reminding yourself of your strengths and resilience even amidst the pain of a breakup. And as you continue to journal and explore your thoughts, you might start to uncover some patterns or themes that contributed to the relationship's breakdown.
This is where that self-awareness piece comes in.
Yeah.
It's about understanding our role in the relationship, both the good and the bad, so we can learn and grow from the experience.
Absolutely. And that self-awareness is essential as we start to think about moving on, which is what we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive.
Yes. So we've covered practical tips for navigating the immediate aftermath of a breakup, strategies for rebuilding our sense of self, and the importance of self-awareness. But what about the big question on everyone's mind?
Yeah.
When is it the right time to start dating again? Stay tuned for part 3 where we'll unpack all that and more. Welcome back to the Wellbeing Podcast. We've spent the last 2 parts of this deep dive really getting into the nitty-gritty of breakups, from the evolutionary reasons why they hurt so much to practical tips for untangling your life from your exes.
It's been quite a journey so far, hasn't it?
It has.
We've explored the emotional roller coaster, the cognitive distortions, the importance of setting boundaries.
Yes. And in this final part, I'm really excited to talk about what everyone's thinking after a breakup.
Dating again.
Dating again. But first, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier
Yeah,
about how healing isn't linear.
right.
There are going to be good days and bad days, right?
Absolutely. And one of the most helpful things you can do for yourself during those tougher moments is to practice self-compassion.
Okay.
It's about treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding you would offer a close friend going through a similar experience.
Okay. I get that in theory,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes it's so much easier to be compassionate towards others than towards ourselves. Any practical tips on how to actually do that?
One technique the sources highlight is mindfulness.
Okay.
It's about paying attention to your thoughts and feelings without judgment. So if you're feeling sad or missing your ex, instead of beating yourself up for those emotions,
Right.
you simply acknowledge them. Right.
Allow yourself to feel them and then let them go.
That sounds a bit like meditation, which I've tried before, but I always get distracted.
Yeah.
Is focusing on your breath really enough to calm those intense emotions?
It might seem simple, but it's incredibly effective.
Yeah.
When we focus on our breath, we're essentially bringing ourselves back to the present moment.
Okay.
And that can be a powerful antidote to anxiety rumination and those what-if spirals that can take over after a breakup.
Interesting. So it's not about trying to force those feelings away. It's more about creating space for them and letting them pass through.
Exactly.
I'm definitely willing to try that. What are some other self-compassion techniques?
One that I personally find really helpful is gratitude.
Okay.
Taking a few minutes each day to appreciate the good things in your life, no matter how small,
Yeah.
can shift your perspective from what you've lost to what you still have.
Oh, I love that. It's like choosing to focus on the abundance instead of the scarcity. And it reminds me of something else the sources talked about.
Yeah.
Creating a self-care toolbox. Yes. That's a fantastic way to proactively manage those difficult emotions and prioritize your well-being. Fill it with activities that bring you joy and make you feel nurtured. Maybe it's taking a long bath, listening to your favorite music, spending time in nature, or connecting with loved ones.
It's like creating a personalized first aid kit for your heart, basically.
Yeah.
And speaking of hearts, let's talk about dating again.
Okay.
It can be such a daunting prospect after a breakup.
Uh-huh.
How do you know when you're truly ready?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
And unfortunately, there's no one-size-fits-all answer.
Right.
But the sources do offer some helpful guidelines. First and foremost, they emphasize the importance of giving yourself ample time to heal.
Uh-huh.
We're talking at least 6 to 12 months, ideally.
Okay, 6 to 12 months. That seems like a long time to some people.
Yeah.
What if you're feeling impatient or worried that you'll never find someone else?
Those feelings are completely understandable. But rushing into dating before you've processed the breakup and learned from it can set you up for repeating unhealthy patterns. It's like going grocery shopping on an empty stomach. You're more likely to make impulsive choices that you'll later regret.
That's such a great analogy. So instead of desperately searching for someone to fill the void this time, is about becoming more discerning, about understanding what you truly want in a partner and what you're willing to compromise on.
Precisely. And during this time of self-discovery, you might realize that some of the things you thought were non-negotiables in a partner actually are negotiable, or vice versa. It's about gaining clarity and becoming more intentional in your approach to dating.
And I imagine that self-awareness can help you avoid falling back into those same old patterns that might have contributed to the breakup in the first place.
Exactly. It's about breaking those negative cycles and creating healthier relationship dynamics in the future.
So to our listeners who are navigating the often turbulent waters of post-breakup life, remember, this healing takes time. Self-compassion is your superpower, and clarity comes from looking inward.
And as you move through this process, you'll not only heal from the heartbreak, but emerge stronger, wiser, and more ready than ever for a love that truly aligns with who you are.
What a beautiful way to put it. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into breakup recovery. We hope you found these insights helpful and empowering. Don't forget to subscribe and like the Wellbeing Podcast. Share your thoughts and let us know in the comments what topics you'd love to hear about in future episodes. Thanks for listening to the Wellbeing Podcast. Take care, stay inspired, and see you next time.